Best practices for Vault. Azure Auth is a crucial topic for organizations using HashiCorp Vault to manage access to Azure resources. To get started, understand that Vault. Azure Auth is a method of authentication that allows users to access Azure resources without having to manage multiple credentials. First, configure the Azure Auth backend in Vault by providing the tenant ID, client ID, and client secret of your Azure application registration. This will enable Vault to authenticate with Azure and manage access to resources. Next, create a role in Vault that defines the permissions and access levels for users. This role should be tied to a specific Azure resource or set of resources, such as a subscription or resource group. When a user authenticates with Vault, they will be assigned this role and granted the corresponding access to Azure resources. To authenticate with Vault, users will need to provide their Azure credentials, such as their username and password or an Azure Access token. Vault will then verify these credentials with Azure and assign the user the role defined in the previous step. One key concept to keep in mind is the idea of least privilege access. This means that users should only be granted the minimum level of access necessary to perform their job functions. In the context of Vault. Azure Auth, this means defining roles that are tightly scoped to specific resources and access levels. Another important best practice is to use short-lived credentials and rotate them regularly. This reduces the risk of credential compromise and limits the damage that can be done if a credential is stolen or misused. Vault provides features such as lease durations and revocation to support this best practice. In terms of practical examples, consider a scenario where you have a team of developers who need access to a specific Azure resource group. You can create a role in Vault that grants read-only access to this resource group, and then assign this role to the developers when they authenticate with Vault. By following these best practices and using Vault. Azure Auth, you can improve the security and management of your Azure resources, while also reducing the complexity and overhead of managing multiple credentials. Remember to always follow the principle of least privilege access. Use short-lived credentials, and rotate them regularly to minimize risk and maximize security.